Fellow citizens of Kenya, I come to you with one more message to the nation. I come at a time when a lot of people are saying the church is not speaking, Christians are quiet. Unless I'm not a Christian myself, I need to remind everyone the church has been speaking all the time through the years. In fact, the church has been the conscience of the nation for so many years. And the only problem we have is that media does not give us as much coverage and then complains that the church is not speaking. Well, I'm here with another message that concerns three main things. First of all, I want to dispense with this whole question of Christian involvement in politics. Next, I would like to briefly address the disunity that has come upon this country that is championed by a few front politicians. And lastly, I would like to speak to the well-meaning citizens of this country that would like to see change, but are always talking about the people at the top doing the change we want. So first of all, should I, as a Christian, be involved in politics? Should I talk about what's going wrong in Kenya? Oh yes, I believe that unless you don't read the Bible, then you can hold such a stand. The truth of the matter is that throughout the Bible, throughout the church history, believers have stood for the truth and have stood against bad governance and so on. Even more, Christians have also been involved in politics. Sometimes there are believers who in fact imagine that David was only a singer of psalms, but never a king. Well, he was the second king of Israel. Solomon, who wrote all these proverbs we read, was a king and a serious lover of God. The prophets spoke directly to government and challenged them to live right. In fact, the Bible does tell us that righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. And Micah would remind us what the Lord would expect of us in Micah 6:8, and that is, what does the Lord require of you? But to love justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Now, to all those that are wondering whether the New Testament has anything to do with Christian involvement in politics, I actually brought my Bible and I'm reading now from the book of Luke chapter 3. This is the message of John the Baptist in the wilderness to the entire community, not in a synagogue somewhere, not in a church hall somewhere, in the wilderness, and people come out to hear him. That is quite phenomenal because this particular age does not ask any pastor, does not ask the church how they should live. Politicians certainly don't even ask that. So this is what John tells the people. I'm reading from verse 10 of Luke chapter 3. What should we then do? The crowds asked. John answered, the man with 2 tunics should share with him who has none, and the one who has food should do the same. Tax collectors also came to be baptized. Teacher, they asked, what should we do? Don't extort money and don't accuse people falsely. Be content with your pay. And so there you are. You ask me if I should be talking to government. You ask me if I should say what is wrong about Kenya. There is John the Baptist, there are the prophets, there is God in the lives of David and Solomon and many other leaders of Israel. But that brings me to the second concern of this particular message, and that is the division that is going on in our country right now. I know that we are so used to being divided according to tribes, and some of us like it. Factions, divisions. There is something really wrong about where we are going with the 2022 politics, and it is regardless of who stands to talk to Kenyans now. I usually thought that it was bad enough to divide Kenyans on the basis of political parties, you know, Jubilee or CORD or Ford or Amani Congress or whatever the case may be. That is divisive enough. We have too many political parties in Kenya. But recently, something has happened within the Jubilee Party that is very disturbing. Of course, first of all, we were treated to the whole narrative of Kieleweke and Tanga Tanga, whoever came up with those phrases. And you know, the media is very, very smart in polarizing people. So Kenya was divided, even within the same party, according to Kieleweke or Tanga Tanga. And then the campaign trail began. And so you have Uhuru Kenyatta going to central Kenya and meeting people at Sagana. And right there, although he's meeting professionals, he's meeting people who speak English and Kiswahili, he resorts to his vernacular speech, Kikuyu. You know, most of them would be able to understand English and Kiswahili, but you can already see Uhuru Kenyatta himself going down to show them that, you know what, you're my people. Adoakwa, you are my people. And a little while later, you find Raila Odinga in Kisumu meeting professionals, lawyers, teachers, doctors, you know, politicians who've been to school, and he falls right back to the Luo. And all the proceedings are conducted in the Luo. Even some of them, like Raila, who say they fought for the second liberation and so on, they're still dividing us according to political parties and according to tribe, according to dialect. We know what this has done to Somalia. Need we promote this in Kenya? I charge not. But if you asked me, one of the most dangerous narratives in our country today is what the Deputy President himself is wielding. This whole issue of the hustler narrative, the hustler nation versus the dynasty nation. But I want to tell you, my friend, Dr. William Ruto, that even the road to hell is painted with a lot of good intentions. You may intend something very good in terms of promoting those who do not have. But I want to remind you, sir, that these same people you are polarizing, you will need. If you become president, you are not going to be president of only those who are job seekers. You are going to need those you are putting aside as belonging to dynasty. And the problem is not that you have good intentions. The problem is what Kenyans read. You know, out in the country here, if you say dynasty and hustler, anyone who has a motorbike sees the person driving a car or a taxi, even if it doesn't belong to them, as belonging to the dynasty nation. This whole narrative is tearing our nation apart. And you need to find a way of redefining that narrative. You need to have a way of accommodating everybody. And this brings me to the last concern for today. What can we do to be able to turn around Kenya? A lot of us imagine that it is the leaders who should change. A lot of us imagine that it is those in power, those in State House, those in the Senate, those in Parliament or MCAs that need to change. Actually, change begins with us. You ask how we can bring about that change. It begins right where we are. It begins where you are in your house. It begins where you are in your office. It begins where you are in church or mosque or wherever it is you work. We blame people in government as being corrupt. But are we corrupt ourselves? As a watchman who takes care of somebody's property or office or home, do you take bribes? So don't expect up there people not to take bribes when you yourself down here are taking bribes. It begins with us. We expect government to tell us the truth. Do we tell the truth ourselves? To our children, to our spouses, to our colleagues at work, to our pastors, to our imams? Do we tell the truth to one another? How angry are we against evil in this country? If we are not angry enough, let's not expect anything to change soon. Recently, there is a lady called Judy that was thrown out of a matatu, a speeding matatu actually. How many of us were angry enough to demand justice for Judy? How many of us? I want to say that if you're on the highway and you see a matatu overlapping and you do nothing, you say absolutely nothing, there is no big change that is going to come to this country. Until we keep law and order, until we do what is right, then will change come to this country. It begins with you and me. And so that's my message today. Let us begin a revolution, but a revolution from down here, not up there. We need a value-based change, VBI, not BBI. We need to soul search as citizens of Kenya. What is wrong with the soul of this country? And go right to the roots and fix that. Then shall we have true change.